Yeah, so forming an LLC, getting an EIN number is literally 10, 15 minutes. I could do it in less time than it took us to record the show.
Well, this is important because a lot of people listening are going to think, oh my God, forming a company, you formed a company.
Yeah.
Do I need an attorney? I'm going to have to pay the attorney, $3,000 to handle all of the paperwork. Mm-hmm. And so what we want to talk about today, and Braden, you're going to go through it, is how easy it is to form an LLC. It's so easy. It's cheap. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have an attorney and you don't have to pay a bunch of money.
What is up? Welcome back to How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate. And this is episode 25, where we're going to take a deep dive into why you need an LLC. Brian, why do we need an LLC?
Well, you got to form a company, right? And so we've looked at different types of companies, S-Corp, C-Corps, and in our investigation, we found that an LLC is the best route to go.
Well, take a step back. You say you need to form a company. Why can't I just go buy my commercial real estate?
Yeah, so you're not just putting this in your personal name. You're not going to find a commercial real estate deal and just saying, hey, I, as Braden Sheik, I'm just going to buy this titled as Braden Sheik. You want some sort of protection. You want a business entity that's going to be separate from you personally.
And so why does an LLC do that? An LLC can protect you personally?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the LLC protects you as a person because that business is the one that did it. So you can insure the business, you can separate it, you separate the accounting, you separate the shareholders, you separate the investments. I mean, everything is kind of separate.
So any liability that company has doesn't flow down to you as a individual. Is that right?
Yeah. So an LLC literally stands for a limited liability company.
So lawsuits, bankruptcy, that type of thing, you're not personally liable for.
Absolutely. Foreclosure, non-recourse debt, even with the LLC.
Yeah, we've been sued a few times just with all of the property that we own, multifamily, people slip and fall, various property damage, things like that. And so they don't sue us personally. I'm not defending myself. We defend the company, and our insurance company defends the company.
Okay, so only the assets of the company are at stake.
That's right.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, and even when you're getting debt and buying the property, they want to see the articles of organization for the company. They want to see the company's operating agreement. They want to see the information for the company because the company is the one getting the debt for the property because the company or the LLC is the one acquiring the asset, right? So you go find this new property, and let's say it's what's a name for a property? We got Aspen Center. All right, let's say you went and bought Aspen Center. You're gonna form an LLC called Aspen Center LLC. That's probably step one if you want to write it down. Name it. So you have Aspen Center LLC.
Yeah, and you can name it whatever you want.
Yeah,
I think our first time we named it LaFortune Properties LLC, and we bought these apartment complexes that were in the LaFortune area of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. But as we bought more and more, we found it easier to incorporate the name of the center into the LLC because it helps keep everything straight. And I don't have to guess what property Aspen Center Retail LLC owns.
Right.
So we found that works. Obviously, if you have a master LLC like ours is Precision Equity, and Precision Equity owns a stake in all of these individual LLCs, then that you can be more creative. But we have a good. It works for us to pick a name that is associated with the property.
There's a little stipulation there. You say you can name it whatever you want to, but you just have to make sure that name's not already taken, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, usually if you name it after the center, like you're saying, that's probably not taken. But you do need to search, at least in Oklahoma, you do need to search and make sure that name's not already taken.
Yeah, or whatever state you're in.
Or anything close to it, actually. A lot of times if the name's close to something else, they'll reject that name. Secretary of State will.
So we've talked about the liability and why we need to have a company to buy real estate, but why is an LLC preferred versus a C-Corp or an S-Corp or a sole proprietor LLC?
Yeah, so one of the biggest reasons for me is that limited liability company is a pass-through entity when it comes to taxes. Mm-hmm. So the company or the LLC will have a net profit or a net loss, and if you own 50% of that company, you personally, the taxes pass through down to you as a 50% owner. So if that LLC at $100,000 profit and you owned 50% of it, you would get a K1 for a $50,000 profit. similar to a 1099.
Okay, so that company doesn't have to file a tax return, is that right?
It does have to file a tax return. It just doesn't have to pay taxes. The members of the LLC or the owners of the LLC pay the taxes on behalf of the company.
Okay.
Whereas an S or a C Corp are taxed directly, and then the members are taxed.
Okay, so if the company still has to pay taxes, then do you have to go get a employee identification number for that company?
You do.
Okay, how do you do that?
Yeah, so forming an LLC, getting an EIN number is literally 10, 15 minutes. I could do it in less time than it took us to record the show.
Well, this is important because a lot of people listening are going to think, oh my God, forming a company, you formed a company.
Yeah.
Do I need an attorney? I'm going to have to pay the attorney, $3,000 to handle all of the paperwork. And so what we want to talk about today, and Braden, you're going to go through it, is how easy it is to form an LLC. It's so easy. It's cheap. You don't have to have an attorney, and you don't have to pay a bunch of money. So
Okay, so we kind of said step one was to choose a name. Is that what we said earlier?
choose a name.
Yeah.
Okay, you've chosen a name. What's step two?
Go to Google and type in your state's name space Secretary of State. And then the first website that pops up is going to be the Secretary of State website. You go in there and there's going to be, a form, an entity. It's going to ask you what sort of entity, and you're going to say LLC. And then it's just going to ask you 15, 20 questions about who you are, how many members are in it, how you want to be taxed. These different things. Anybody can do it. They're easy questions. If you don't know the answers about you should know the answers. It's going to ask if you sell cigarettes. It's going to ask if you have, drivers regularly, or if you tow things, or if you sell things over state lines. They're pretty simple questions. Where
And
the
with you
business is
just
based.
forming this to buy commercial real estate, the answer to most all of those questions is no, because you're not really running an interstate commerce business.
Yeah, it's a holdings company in reality. You're not paying sales tax or anything like that. You don't have employees.
This will be really easy for you guys. So, okay, keep
Yeah.
going.
So 10 minutes in, you've answered the questions. At the end, you're going to type your name as your signature, and you're going to say, and in the state of Oklahoma, it's super easy. They literally give it to you immediately. You're able to download it after all the questions. You get articles of organization. It's just,
What does that look like for those that just don't know? You get an LLC. They give you articles of incorporation. What is that?
Yep. So it's a one-page piece of paper. We'll throw it up on the screen here that says articles of organization. It's got a bunch of fancy embossing and the Secretary of State of your state's signature on it. And it says this company is hereby incorporated as of this date.
So it exists in
this
Oklahoma.
state. Exactly.
Okay.
The next step after you have that, which there's another important document, you get the articles of organization, but the more important one is the articles of filing. And that's just the PDF printout of all the questions you answered going over it. And it has the registered agent, which is just who the person that is making decisions on behalf of the business. If you need to get sued, or if you need to be served something, or if
So who does that? Because I know that's come up with us in some lawsuits on who the registered agent is. Do you want that to be yourself, or do you want that to be someone else?
Yeah. So in the state of Oklahoma and a lot of other states, you can use a company as a registered agent for companies, right? So what we typically do is, the Criterion Fund is the registered agent for all of our other companies, because we're the managing partner in all of those companies. So in reality, if you need to send a notice, you don't need to send it to Aspen Center LLC. I'm the registered agent for that company. You can go ahead and send it to me.
Yep.
I've seen people use attorneys, law firms. I've seen people use themselves personally. The only reason I wouldn't use myself personally is just so if somebody looks up my company name, they don't see Braden Sheik and my address. They see the Criterion Fund and my company's address.
I guess some people have used attorneys just because it makes them harder to contact in the event of a lawsuit, or what?
Yeah, which is another reason some people may use LLCs, is just so many layers, to keep maybe their ownership private, or what they're involved in private, or the body's harder to find. I don't know. Maybe they've been divorced so many times. They got to constantly hide everything. I don't know.
I don't think it's a problem to register yourself or your company.
No, because if somebody
needs to get a hold of you, that's how they're going to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to figure it out. So the next step is getting the federal employee identification number, FEIN. Your tax ID is also what it's called.
You go to the IRS website for that, I suppose.
Yes. The millions of dollars that has to be made off of the scammers to register companies and get EIN numbers is ridiculous. Only go directly to the IRS site. Only go directly to your state government website, because there is so many other companies that will send you a mail for like a mail newsletter that says you can renew your company for $300 today. Fill out this form, and it's $26 online. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So people
I've also heard people say that they have to go to, well, in Oklahoma, they have to go to the Capitol. There's some offices. You got to go to the Secretary of State office.
It's insane.
And there's...
So you take your articles of organization and you can then you go to the IRS website and get your register for your EIN.
Yep.
Do it all online.
Where's your state? What's your company name? What is the date that you got approved? Who's the owner? What's your social? And then you hit download and it populates a 10-digit number.
So for those that don't know, an EIN is like a social security number for the LLC, for the company. Right. So it's nothing more than that. It's something you file your taxes with. It just identifies that as kind of an individual in the tax system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we have social security numbers for, is to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with the company. They need an EIN so they can pay taxes.
Okay, and so the IRS, the EIN number, that's immediate, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's immediate. You can get it mailed to you if you like. I'm sure they could fax it to you if you wanted, but you can download it immediately.
Okay.
God bless 2021, man. I mean, just too easy.
Yeah.
So now you've got a legally registered company within 10, 15 minutes in your state. You're legally registered according to the IRS. You can pay taxes. They're expecting that tax return once you get this, by the way.
I thought that at least in the state of Oklahoma, it's not immediate, is it? Don't they need to look at it, make sure your name's okay, that you've got all the information?
Worst case scenario, it's 24 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's within, sometimes within hours.
Okay.
They have rejected a few of our names before.
Yeah.
Because they're too close to another business name, and then you have to change it a little bit.
Yeah. Did we mention that there's a search typically, so you can write in the name that you want to call your company, hit the search bar, and it'll tell you what's the closest name to your company that you're wanting to use, and then you can decide right there, someone's got that exact same name, it's going to get rejected, or the closest name is not even close to what I want to call it, so I know I'm good.
Yeah, everybody's got a naming convention. They definitely have cert bars. What I've found is that when you only use the name of the property, typically somebody's owned that property before, sometimes multiple times. Sometimes they kind of have the same idea. It's not a bad idea, you know what I mean? And then you just run into the problem where you have, multiple naming things. So like ours, we do, the Criterion Fund, then the name of the property, then the city.
Yeah,
it's fail proof.
Yeah.
So come up with a system. It's pretty easy. And like Joel said, you do that so you can keep track of it. When you've got a dozen of these things and you just named it, Awesomeness Investments 1, you've got 6 of those.
Forget which property that is, right? Or
and to throw another curveball in, Awesomeness 1 may have bought 2 properties, and then you have to figure out
which 2.
It's just it gets hairy.
All right. So now you've got your EIN. What's the next step?
Yeah. So now you've got your company. You're set.
Okay,
Another
you're ready to go.
Positive for an LLC is that it can be a partnership. We're sole proprietor. You may not be able to have more members, but the LLC doesn't restrict you there. So you can form the partnership however you want. And where would that be done?
Well, you don't you do it with this? Is that with the Secretary of State? I think you were talking about answering all these questions. I think one thing that it asks is, okay, you want to do an LLC, and how are you going to organize that LLC? There's sole proprietorship, like Joel was saying.
Correct.
There's general partnership, and sometimes people don't know. So just to clarify, a sole proprietorship is an individual or a married couple.
Correct.
Is typically a sole proprietorship, and if you have more than one member, then that's going to be a general partnership. Is that right?
Yeah, and a big thing is they use a different form. Sole proprietors are on a Schedule C on their tax return, and then an LLC tax is a partnership. It gets a K1 because there's multiple members. So I think it matters. We typically always have multi-member LLCs taxed as partnerships, which just says, if there's 100% of this company, we have 10 partners, each partner has 10% of it, and we made $100,000 that year. Each partner gets K1 for $10,000.
Yeah.
Right. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. One thing I think also, I don't know why you might want to change, but people should know that if you are in an LLC and you decide later on, or your accountant decides, hey, I think you'd be better as an S-Corp or a C-Corp, you can make that change. Yep. Once you designate it, that's not forever. You can,
good point.
You can have your accountant easily file the paperwork to make that change. So don't be afraid. Start as an LLC if you want. Of course, obviously, you probably want to get some input from your accountant before you do this. But don't be afraid that you've got to be an LLC and you can't change anything from now on. It's an easy change.
Yeah, and I'll get some I'll get a slide to throw up right here because there's so many LLCs. And one commercial real estate investment, you may have a dozen. You may have a dozen, right? Because I'm going to have an LLC as a sponsor to protect myself that owns a portion of the property I'm buying, which is a separate LLC, right? And then my investors, there may be however many of those, they're all going to have separate LLCs because most of our investors invest through some sort of retirement vehicle, some sort of trust, some sort of investment entity, right? Like, Brian Duck, maybe Duck LLC, that you run all of your passive investments.
Yeah, that one's taken, by the way, so nobody can take that. Just to let you know, don't waste your time.
Yeah, so if something happens with one of those, they're not suing Brian Duck. They're suing that entity, and it's just all of these different layers of protection, and it can be complicated, but you just write it down.
It sounds complicated. The LLC is really, really simple.
Correct.
But to wrap this show up and to tell people what they do next, the LLC is the company, but the workings of the company and the structure of the company all comes through an operating agreement.
Right.
And that you may have an attorney help you with or get a really good sample. But that's the next step, and maybe another episode is the operating agreement lays out exactly how the LLC is set up, how it works, what the ownership structure is, how the funds work, who does the taxes, all of that stuff. So
it's the rule book.
If you own this company just by yourself, do you still need an operating agreement? Do you guys think?
I think so.
Just to make it clear.
I mean, if you're the only owner, you probably don't need an operating agreement.
It's a formality, but it's nice to have because if you wanted to sell that company, if you wanted to allow somebody to buy in at a different time, at a different rate, if you're planning on owning 100% of it forever,
if you die, the operating agreement could give instructions on how it lives on.
Yeah.
So I think it's always good to have it, and that's not that complicated either, but it is way more comprehensive than just forming the LLC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And typically not a real expensive thing, right, to get an attorney to do.
No. Worst case scenario, you pay, $1,015 in the beginning and then you can recycle it forever. But when I say worst case scenario, like you can download some offline, if you email me and ask nice enough, I may just give you mine. But I mean, they're pretty easy.
And it'll be less if you start with a template and have an attorney help change it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, they're different. They're all different. You know what I mean? You have entities that invest in entities, and then those entities have entities in them, and it
gets complicated. And
but you write it down. You go on that Secretary of State website. You have an accountant that keeps track of all of it and files your taxes. I mean, K1s go to that entity, and then that entity gives K1s to this entity, and then that entity ultimately passes down to me, and then that's where I'm getting tax from. But anyway, it's easy to do. It's easy to get a hold of. You don't have to go to the Secretary of State's website. You don't have to wait forever. It's not thousands of dollars for an entity or an operating agreement or anything like that. It's 10 minutes, some Google searching, and you are legally registered to pay taxes, to run a business, to distribute, whatever you need to.
That's awesome. Only 10 minutes of time, and basically you formed your company.
And it's done, yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
good.
That is it. That is a deep dive on LLC, why you need one. Make sure to check us out on the web, howtoinvestincre.com. Like and subscribe. Turn on the little bell for the notifications so you get notifications of uploads. And we will see you guys next week.
Time.
Thanks.